Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your Sun in Gemini and Taurus rising. And I can relate to this because my Sun is in the opposite sign of Sagittarius and my rising sign is Taurus. And so this is going to be similar in how this manifests in terms of these influences. So the rising sign is your calling card, if you will. It is your appearance. The rising sign's ruler is your ruler, so your ruler is Venus. But it is true that you can regard your sun sign's ruler as your ruler as well, which is Mercury. So Mercury and Venus, do they go together? You know, how does that work? They are quite different. Mercury is the mind, and Venus is sensual. So, Venus and Taurus, especially, the other sign that is ruled by Venus is Libra, and that's an air sign, but Taurus is an earth sign. So, earth is the material. And so the material senses are very much a part of what Taurus is and what Venus would represent. Taurus rules the second house of earned income and also your possessions. And so this sort of vibe is in alignment with what we would expect from Venus. Venus is a ruler of the second house, and part of what the person can project onto the world. Namely, I would say with the rising sign being the cusp of the first house and the first house being the body, a woman with this rising sign can be physically attractive. Well, men can too, but for women, I would say voluptuous qualities of one sort or another. Maybe not, totally like that. I was not, totally I was a little bit different in my body type, but the body will tend to be attractive and it actually outright sexy. I was kind of like hemming and hawing of how I was going to say that, but that's the best way of putting it because you can be attractive or beautiful, and it's almost like this. It's almost asexual. I don't know how else. It's like a pristine type of beauty. The Taurus is very earthy in its sensual appeal, in other words. Now, Libra being the other Venus ruled sign could be more of that, ice princess or ice queen, where it's like a beauty that is, obvious to see, but it doesn't feel like it's touched by the earth. So, anyway, I believe that the rising sign can really give us a window into the first, the influences growing up, and then as you get older, you start to resemble more of your sun sign. That's my theory. And so the person who grows up like this may be in a family where there is this emphasis on the material. And I was going to say, like, maybe they have materialistic parents who emphasize the material, whether or not they're just like into excessive consumption is a different story. But they just may be very connected to the material and really telling their child, oh, yeah, this is important. This is a very important aspect of life. And because the sun sign is Gemini, that will clash with those messages because Gemini is much more, your food is much more your ideas, the information that you take in. than actual food. I could see a Gemini person forgetting to eat. But when you have Taurus rising, that can change a little bit because you may be kind of a foodie, at least for a certain portion of your life, and you may really get into the whole sensual aspect of food. And so this can also relate to the kind of things that you find enjoyable. I think that a Gemini sun sign tends to be intellectual. So when I say intellectual, in general, I mean that they are motivated to learn. It doesn't mean that they have to have a bunch of degrees. As a matter of fact, I believe that there are many people out there who are they have the right stuff mentally. They're able to um, go to college, graduate, even go and get a graduate degree, and all of that stuff, and yet they really don't care about learning other than what it can do for them to advance them professionally. There are people like that. So to me, that is not an intellectual person. They may have the raw stuff that could make them learn very easily, acquire knowledge, but this is something that you have to want. It can't just be motivated by this outer um, desire. I mean, it can be motivated by, just going and getting the going into academia and that kind of thing, but to really love it doesn't require a college degree. So some people could be self-taught, but they're very intelligent and intellectual. Intelligence means that they have the raw material, and intellectual means that they delight in that pursuit. They're not just doing it because they have to do it, because they're getting paid or because they want to get paid. They're doing it for the love of it. And Taurus, I call Taurus a meat and potato sign, where it's very basic. And I'm not saying that as an insult. And by the way, there are very few people that present as the pure archetype of their sign. There's usually going to be a lot of variation. So you can have intellectual Taurus sun signs because, or philosophical Taurus sun signs, when typically you wouldn't associate those qualities with Taurus. And that's because these people have other influences, including inner planets and house placements, that would change that quite a bit. Um, right off the bat, I think of somebody like the late Wayne Dyer, who was very prominent in the field of pop psychology, and then he went into spiritual topics that kind of dealt like with self-help or expansion. And he was a Taurus, but he was super philosophical, and he had Gemini. I can't remember, I think his moon might have even been Gemini, but he was very well read, and he just had that love of learning, always coming up with new material, new discoveries that he had made. And he also was very glib, he was well spoken. So that was the Gemini influence, obviously. And that brings me to another point, because I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I don't even have notes, so I'm kind of going all over the map here. But Taurus is known as being very patient, but if you inject this Gemini energy, it's going to probably make you more uh, prone to jumping from one thing to the other. Taurus people can get in a rut because they're of the fixed modality. So it's a good balance to have that mutability of Gemini, because it can mean that you change more often. And changing more often is important to be able to go with the flow or take advantage of opportunities. People who are very set in their ways or stuck in their ways, they have a hard time, even seeing the value of doing something differently. So, getting back to the body and the body type, with Taurus rising, usually I think of Gemini people as skinny, but with Taurus rising, you may be more voluptuous. Some people may be chubby. But I think that as you get older, you may lose that baby fat, as we would call it, and get and slim down naturally, because you will be more influenced by the Gemini energy. Because, even people who develop um, bad habits when it comes to eating, as they get older, they can tend to naturally avoid that. I'm not talking about eating disorders, and eating disorders are definitely real. And if somebody has an eating disorder, they have to pay attention to that. Um, there's a difference between overeating or eating when you're not really hungry and bulimia. It's not, you can't just say, oh, wow, somebody has an eating disorder because they ate when they're not hungry. Sometimes people eat because they're feeling, um, low. And it's definitely not eating in a I don't want to say disciplined way, but it's definitely not eating in a way that is responding to your natural cues for hunger. So in that sense, it is out of order, but it doesn't mean that it's a full-blown eating disorder. Some people, um, it's kind of like human instinct to, crave comfort foods and kind of try to make yourself feel better if you have, gone through something difficult. The problem is that when it happens habitually, and the person's health suffers from it. So there could be something along these lines, but in general, it can simply be that you really maybe come from a family that loves to cook, and that is something that is very important to that family, and you kind of adapt to that, um, or influenced by it. But as you get older, you probably will be the kind of person that um, isn't really plugged into it that much. Um, and I would say, especially for women, because I experienced this as somebody who has this rising sign as well, is the tendency to dress provocatively even throughout your 20s. And what is the reasoning behind this? And this is like false advertising, because you're really quite a cerebral person as a woman. You may dress like a tart, for lack of a better word, but you're really quite intelligent. And this can work against you, because you can draw attention from the wrong people, meaning that people who don't really see you as a full human being, but just see your body. And I made a comment in another video about Jewel, the singer. And by the way, whatever happened to Jewel? I haven't heard from her lately. But she's a Gemini, I believe, sun sign. And she was on, I don't know if it was Johnny Carson or Jay Leno, The Tonight Show, back in the day when she was becoming, it probably was Jay Leno, because I don't think she became famous until after Johnny had left. It was probably in the mid 90s. I think it was around 96 when she kind of came out. And I guess she had some kind of like a low cut top or a tight top. And then Bob Dylan was on the same show and she saw him looking at her chest, which was probably hard to do given what she was likely wearing. And she said, "Stop staring at my tits," and, like yelled at him. And I hope that that isn't just an urban legend, because I wouldn't want to, you know, uh, say, slander her. But anyway, that's what I heard. Um, and I'm using that as an example, even if for some reason I'm wrong about that. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But women, unfortunately, do this sometimes where they wear something that is very revealing and then they act offended if a man notices it, starts talking to them, and they feel harassed by it. They feel threatened by this man's attraction to them. And, it's one of those things where it's like, um, you can say, look, but don't touch. But even though that's absolutely 100% correct, you're going to draw attention if you dress in a certain way. So if that Gemini part of yourself is kind of like appalled that you're, getting whistles or something like that, cat calls, and then you chastise that person, you better check yourself, because ask yourself, why do I need to do this? I actually have had this debate with other women who express this, or have seen this debate played out. And what these women will say is, well, I have the right to do it. That's not being argued. The question is, why do you need to do it? There's something that is compelling that person to want to be seen in that way. And they have to admit it to themselves. But Gemini, being an air sign, can have a lot of abstraction. So the person can be very disconnected from their motives or motivations in life. Got to be connected to these things, because then you can truly explore why you're doing what you're doing. And then you won't feel like you are some kind of victim when you're putting yourself out there like that. So that might be something in one way or another that plays out for you in terms of the Taurus versus the Gemini energy. I mean, just in general, you may attract earth signs like Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, and by extension, the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, because um, Taurus is a feminine sign, and you may have that kind of more grounded nature that is appealing to those signs. You may even be a bit shy in some cases. I shouldn't use the word shy, but maybe subdued, where, because I don't like, when I think about myself having Taurus rising and being a sun in fire and Sag, I don't think that I'm shy. Like, I just crawl into myself if somebody comes up and talks to me, or the idea of having to talk to a stranger. It doesn't bother me at all, but I don't seek it out. That's the difference. I'm introverted, and I enjoy being alone and doing quiet activities. I'm not wanting to just be in the center of a social storm. And Gemini, being an air sign, is very into socializing. So that can be something that is a bit of a push-pull within yourself. Because when you're with other people, you may not talk that readily, and and you might be reading all these things about Gemini that make you question, well, why am I like this? Why am I so introverted when I'm supposed to be extroverted? There are a number of factors that can indicate this, though. It's not just sun and rising signs. And as for professions, the rising sign I don't think plays much into it, unless the person. I would say this. This is a real stretch here, but let's say you have Venus square Pluto, or maybe Venus opposing Pluto or Venus in conjunction with Pluto, and you have this combination, you might make the perfect stripper if you're, well, I guess it could be either gender, or even, I was going to say, or even porn star, but that these kinds of things, I don't take me saying that I'm endorsing these professions, these types of ways of making a living, because I think they can be very much fraught with peril, and that they're not necessarily high. They're not, I don't believe that they're high vibrational, but I don't want to judge people at the same time. But the reason I even say that is that it's kind of like you can remain untouched while you are doing this thing that you could say exploits your body, but it also profits from your body. And I read so many, I read comments from people that, really there's this strong feeling that women who are prostitutes or sex workers in some way, strippers or whatever, that they are being exploited, like they are the victims. And while I have read that, a big percentage of, great percentage of all sex workers were sexually abused growing up, I still don't think that that means that it's inevitable that they have to get into that field. So I think it's a personal choice, and it removes that person's personal power from it, acting like they don't have power. So I don't see why people say, oh, that person's being used. Maybe they're using what they have available, what they think is their gift to the world, and making money from it. So that's that. So you can kind of get lost in the abstractions, but it could be a good thing, because then you don't have to really focus on what's happening. Um, but this could be a good, anybody who is in the educational field or in even journalism, and both of these could be associated with Gemini, or even a writer, having that Taurus, what I would call backbone, being the beginning of the natal chart, I think could act or serve as a grounding mechanism to make the person much more wanting, like if it's journalism, wanting tangible evidence of something, not just kind of spreading rumors, but really doing the legwork to make something substantial and finding out the truth. And any kind of writing can become, can be solid. Maybe it's nonfiction, actually, where it's more about information than creativity in some cases. But they're, being Venus ruled means that you probably are creative. So maybe it is creative writing. Sales may be something that interests you because you have this rulership of Venus, so money isn't something that you shy away from, making money, and Gemini is the consummate salesperson. In terms of your love life, definitely with these two placements, definitely look at other factors as well. Look at your moon sign. If your moon sign is in water or even fire, you may be more romantic. Although Taurus, I feel, is romantic, being ruled by Venus. But the Water signs are very sentimental, emotional, and the fire signs are passionate. So there is like romantic influence with them, and they would be more likely to want relationship, especially moon in Libra. Um, and with Venus and Mars as well, and even Mercury. These are all personal planets. And I feel like, you have to look at that. If you have Venus in Taurus, if you have Venus in Pisces, or no, you can't have Venus in Pisces. Taurus or Cancer, that's what I meant to say. You can be much more devoted. So there are Gemini people that I see, like let's say I'm looking at YouTube and I see these people and I know they're Geminis, and they do seem like they have that Cancer influence. And I know that they're probably much more likely to be devoted to a partner, to family, and things like that. The people that are more with the more fire and air, they might tend to either marry later in life or just enjoy their freedom. Because Gemini just loves variety, and you might fear being with the same person year after year. You might want to trade in or trade. I was going to say trade up, but that's not really Gemini's belief system. It's just more like the novelty factor. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.